This is Sphinx Radio, exploring the enigmas of the ages and the puzzles of the present, with your host, William H. Kennedy. Today we have a very special guest from Brazil, a very well-known philosopher and translator of philosophical texts, Olavo de Carvalho. Welcome to Sphinx Radio.
Nice to meet you, Mr. Kennedy.
Right, I hope I pronounced your name right. My Portuguese is not perfect.
That's impossible to pronounce, don't worry.
Okay, very good. Now, sir, you do a lot of very different and interesting things. You're a journalist and you deal a lot with philosophy as well. And you're currently offering an online seminar in philosophy, which is in Portuguese, but you're also going to do one in the near future in English. And for my listeners and myself, I highly recommend this. I'm going to take this seminar myself online, and I was just curious for myself and the listeners who may also join you. What philosophers are you going to cover in this seminar?
Well, our online philosophy seminar is rather different from what students would find in an ordinary academic philosophy course with the same name. In fact, even the two words I use to name the online course, seminar and philosophy, should be understood in a different manner from how they are usually taken in academia, especially in American academia. In the context of our courses, the word seminar should not be understood as meaning a form of academic instruction that brings together small discussion groups to focus on a particular topic. First, because our online philosophy course is a lecture-based course, and second, because our seminar is a seminar in the sense of the old Latin word seminarium, from which the English word is derived. The word seminarium, from semen, seed, means seedbed or nursery, and our philosophy seminar is exactly this. A place, though a virtual one, where we show seminal ideas to our students. As a philosophy, it does not mean the study of works of key thinkers and of the tradition of commentary and interpretation gravitating around these works. This is more properly philosophical scholarship, which is important, of course, but it's not philosophy. As I understand it, the teaching of philosophy cannot aim at training academics, these people who are recognized as having the credentials to talk, teach, and write about philosophical matters just because they have fulfilled certain curricular requirements. They have read a number of books, passed exams, and obtained a good grade. For Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, philosophy was not a profession, not a job, not an academic occupation. They did not work as philosophers from 9 to 5 and then went home back to the real life. Because for them, philosophy was the real life. Let's say it was a lifestyle and an inner discipline, which joined together the search of intellectual knowledge, the struggle toward more improvement, and the effort toward what they call eudaimonia, the harmony of the various impulses of the soul. Thus, following the example of Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle, in our philosophy seminar, we do not study philosophy as students in some modern university with a view to becoming professional academics, but as philosophers in the strong sense of the term, as persons training not only to live by philosophy, but to live in it, to live for it, and for the sake of it. We philosophize not to meet academic requirements, but to find answers to our existential questions. I have been teaching philosophy in our university for some time, but now I'm tired of it. I decided to do something completely different. Also, and finally, addressing your question in a more specific manner, we do not study philosophy by merely reading and explaining the works of key thinkers, but rather by dealing with specific problems drawn from situations encountered in today's everyday life, and by attempting to trace these problems back to their intellectual roots. As Augustus Comte used to say, the problems of the living always originate in the thought of some dead philosopher. For that reason, philosophers who have had a profound influence on the present culture and life even though their ideas in themselves are not so valuable, may receive a lot of attention from us. One example is Niccolo Machiavelli. The lessons I gave about his political philosophy have been published in Brazil in a book called Machiavelli or the Demonic Confusion, a title that suggests how blurred and fanciful Machiavelli's so-called realism is, in my opinion. We also spent months doing analytical reading of René Descartes' Meditations on First Philosophy, precisely to show its residual influence on the Western mindset and try to get rid of it. The problems that interest us the most are those ones concerning the powers and limits of human knowledge, the structure of reality as it can be known by human beings, and the means to investigate and possibly ascertain the immortality of the soul. But we also study several topics on political philosophy, a discipline I have been teaching in the Catholic University of Paraná at the beginning of the decade. For example, the nature and structure of power, the history and meaning of the revolutionary movement, and so on. We are also interested in philosophical problems posed by the reading of the Bible and by the study of comparative religion. That's it. It's not properly, we are not intended studied by authors, but by specific problems.
Very fascinating. And just to point out, Socrates in the Apology actually denied being a professional philosopher. That was part of his defense when he was on trial. So you're saying philosophy in this sense is really the root of the word is the love of wisdom, which we bring in to our daily lives, more so than just a strict academic understanding of the subject, which I also want to point out, I have a master's degree in philosophy, and I understand that people who have gone to university and may have taken a philosophy course might have been somewhat turned off by the academic setting, but this isn't really what you're touching upon. Would you agree that philosophy in your context is to bring meaning and understanding and maybe some wisdom into our lives?
Yeah, that's the idea. I was a university teacher, but now I want to be something different. I want to be a real philosopher, and that is a man who philosophizes in search of his own salvation, not necessarily in a religious sense.
Oh, right. I mean, questions of meaning and being, and very profound and deep questions. Now, one thinker that you have translated into Portuguese, which not too many people are familiar with, was a French philosopher named René Guénon, who did a lot with comparative religion. What initially sparked your interest in Guénon? Because not too many people really write about him.
Yes, I was not the first Brazilian translator of René Guénon. Many years ago, a scholar named Fernando Galvão translated several of Guénon's books.
Into Portuguese?
Into Portuguese, yes.
Oh, very good.
This is one in the 50s.
Oh, wow. I wasn't aware of that.
These editions today are impossible to find.
Oh, very good.
You can say that I was the first Brazilian writer to place and discuss Guénon's teachings before a larger public. In my opinion, there is no philosophical perspective is serious enough if it does not cope with the challenges posed by Guénon and the traditionalist school, and in a more general sense, by the spreading of Eastern doctrines in Europe and the United States. Guénon, for instance, is the most radical critic of modern Western science, and what he has to say about the subject can only be ignored at our own risk. Guénon is in fact a very deep thinker, very deep analyst of the Western civilization, and a harsh critic of our civilization, probably the most radical critic of all. His work cannot be ignored.
Oh, very interesting. I've written about Guénon myself in English, and I would definitely agree. His criticisms are harsh and penetrating, and kind of very rough, but there's great hope for individuals and small groups within Guénon's writing. So he's not completely cynical as a lot of people claim him to be. And
right, he's not.
he's there's a spiritual dimension to his work that his critics often ignore, and it's really, he's more targeting individuals and small groups of people, and that's where the hope in his writings really come out. Would you agree?
Of course. We can't disagree with in this or that point, but we cannot deny he's a very sincere and serious thinker. Huh?
Oh, yeah, definitely so, and very hopeful, not as negative as his critics write him off as.
Well, he used to say that the end of a civilization is nothing more than the end of an illusion.
Right, that very famous quote.
It's not the end of the world.
No, very good. What originally led you to Guénon? How did you first come across him in your studies?
It was just a coincidence. Someone gave me a copy of Jacob Needleman's book, The Sword of Gnosis.
Yeah.
I got fascinated. It was not. There are several essays, not only by Guénon, but also by Titus Burckhardt and Fritjof Long and Ted Hossein Nasser. So, if influencing does not mean molding or determining, but simply waking up for a challenge. I can say I was very deeply influenced by all these authors. Ted Hossein Nasser, who was the Minister of Culture in Iran during the Shah government, and Titus Burckhardt, the Swiss author, and Fritjof Long, and so on, and others. Huh?
Oh, very fascinating. Just so people know, my listening audience, I was Jacob Needleman's teaching assistant, and we did a whole seminar on his book, The Sword of Gnosis, which I highly recommend that everyone out there definitely read. Now, could you give us your webpage for people who are interested in your work? Now, you have some essays in English which are very fascinating. What is your webpage, please?
My main webpage is the Interamerican.org. The Interamerican.org. That means the Inter-American Institute for Philosophy that I founded some years ago. And there's also my page in Portuguese, where you can find also some articles translated into English. It's www.olavodecarvalho.org.
Very good, and people can link to this on sphinxradio.com as well. I'll have a link up to your articles, and I must say they are very thought-provoking, and whether you agree or disagree, one thing I love about your work is you really get the reader thinking for himself and questioning.
Disagree is not the problem. Often I disagree with myself. This is not the problem.
Well, that's the nature of philosophy, really. That's perfectly legitimate. Now, you live in the United States now. You're originally from Brazil. You work with some other interesting thinkers. Who were some of the other thinkers in this organization you formed?
Well, you can see at least at the Inter-American Institute page. We have been working with Dr. Paul Gottfried, Dr. Edwin Vieira, Dr. Earl Fox, several American thinkers, all very interesting, very talented, and very proud and happy of being in touch with them.
Yeah, it's really a fascinating group of thinkers you pulled together there, and ones you would not normally see together.
Yes, very different people. Huh?
Yeah, very different, very, very interesting, and
not only in the United States, we have also
international, sure.
Romania, even in China, Brazil, and so on.
Oh yeah, it's quite an amazing collection of people you pulled together. I was very, very impressed. Now, here in the States, I understand you're friends with Alan Keyes. Is that correct? The political.
Yes, I'm a friend of Alan Keyes, and I admire him so much.
Oh yeah, he's another interesting sort of thinker.
Not a politician, eh?
A politician, but a
great man.
But a PhD in Harvard in political studies, I believe, government. He worked with Harvey C. Mansfield. Now, Dr.
That's it.
Yeah, now, Dr. Keyes, he also has some very interesting things to say, not just people know him normally as a commentator on contemporary political topics, but he probes much deeper in some of his other writings, which people should really take a look at. Now, I also understand you've done some translations of Leo Strauss, who was a famous professor at the University of Chicago.
No, not translation. I did not translate Strauss, but I wrote several articles about
Oh, you wrote articles? I stand corrected. You wrote some articles about Leo Strauss. How did that, what led you to Strauss? Because he's a hugely influential philosopher, especially amongst the neoconservatives in the United States, like the Crystals and several other people. What led you to him?
Yes, I admire very much Leo Strauss, but I have a kind of, let's say, sympathetic disagreement with many of his theses, including the general idea of America as a superpower, as a country that has the obligation to spread democracy everywhere. I believe these things don't work.
Oh, yeah, I mean, there's actually a wonderful documentary called The Power of Nightmares about Leo Strauss that was made by a British filmmaker named Adam Curtis, who pretty much says the same thing. He had this, whole worldview where you're right that America should be this great moral model. And I would agree. Though Leo Strauss has some interesting and important things to say, I don't exactly agree with everything he was promoting. In fact, some of it is a little bit on the edge, which comes out in the Power of Nightmares documentary. But you really pointed out some of the good and bad in his work in your essays on him, and I just think he's a thinker not too many Americans are familiar with, but he's hugely influential in American politics. Would you agree?
Yeah, sure. And the third part of his work are the interpretations he made of Plato and Aristotle, and also his book on Spinoza. As a reader of philosophy, he's a real genius. He understands philosophy books as nobody else. It's fantastic.
Oh, yeah, he's a very wonderful thinker, and I guess the most important people to come out, I guess the Crystals. William,
I admire both the Crystals, Irving and William. They're very good people, but this does not mean I always agree with them.
Oh, no, not with I'm just pointing out how influential Leo Strauss was, because the average person, even the average intellectual in the United States, has never heard of him. And he's hugely important and is very worthy of study. And your essays in particular are a very good point of departure when looking at Leo Strauss, who is, again, as I say, probably the most underrated philosopher in American history, but also one of the most politically influential. Whether you agree with him or not, I think more people should look at what he had to say, and I'm sure you'd agree with that.
Well, absolutely. He's absolutely indispensable. But I would also stress the importance of Eric Voegelin.
Oh, yeah.
Philosopher who lived many years in the United States and was a close friend of Leo Strauss.
Oh, yeah.
Voegelin is even better than Strauss.
Oh, you think so? Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. Now, what do you think about a writer I used to like a lot about, who I believe was at Chicago, Alan Bloom, who wrote The Closing of the American Mind? What's your opinion of Bloom?
He's a very talented writer, and this book special is absolutely indispensable. The Closing of the American Mind is a classic. Every American should read it.
Oh, yeah, definitely so. And
what's happening now?
Oh, yeah, I mean, he passed away. It's an older book, but it's probably more important now than when he actually wrote it, because many of the problems he pointed out in it are certainly manifesting in our society now. I mean, I greatly admire Bloom and even your efforts to liberate philosophy from the academic setting, which, as Bloom pointed out, it's just completely narrowed into, for lack of a better term, our educational system dumbs people down through, things like over-specialization and relativism and just plain not reading the old classic texts. And that's really was Alan Bloom's message, and it's important. That's an important book for people to read if they want to understand what's going wrong with the United States. Would you agree?
Sure. There's a long process of destruction of American higher education. If you look to Brazil, we'll see what America will be in the future if the things continue to going in the same direction. Because in Brazil, 38% of university students cannot read or write. 38%. This is a complete disgrace. The university in Brazil will completely destroyed by the Marxist and politically correct people that want to move everybody's head according to a uniform pattern. This is totally destructive.
Oh, I would agree. I mean, you really cannot bring egalitarianism into the intellectual realm because, quite frankly, there'll always be people who are more intelligent and more creative than others, and you can't have a level field in that area. The only way you can do that is if you drag everybody down.
Yeah, the intellectual life is hierarchical by its very nature. If egalitarianism could be useful in intellectual life, everybody would be a Nobel Prize, huh?
But that's not the way it works in this life.
Of course it's not.
Very, very good. I'm enjoying this conversation very much. Now, in your opinion, for the average person out there who's listening, what's the number one philosopher or philosophy book they should start with? What should they read today if they want to embark on an inner understanding of philosophy?
Philosophy is Plato and Aristotle. Everything is there. Everything is there.
So you'd agree with the old statement that Western philosophy are but footnotes to Plato?
This is perfect. I confirm it every day, every day. There's no problem, for example, in political philosophy, that you cannot find explained 2,400 years ago in Plato. It's absolutely fantastic. This should be mandatory reading for every university student.
Oh, yeah, very good. And I mean, Plato, what I love most about him is he explains how easily in the Republic that democracies can collapse into tyrannies.
Yeah,
I mean, democracy is just on the edge of becoming a dictatorship, and we, as people, have to understand that.
No, the French novelist Georges Bernanos, who lived in Brazil for some time, used to say democracy is not the opposite of dictatorship. It's cause. It's the cause of dictatorship.
Yes, it's very true, and Plato acknowledged this a long, long time ago. And as you say, there's this bias. They say, don't read dead white men. Well, Plato is one dead white man that everybody should read.
Of course. Because there are many white dead men that should be read.
Right, but
should be listened to.
Plato especially as a point of departure for philosophy and really understanding the nature of how our world got to where it is today. And I'm highly, highly critical of what modern and contemporary society has become. As much as I enjoy my own life and enjoy the technology and the internet, there's a lot of problems out there which are not being addressed because the general population, as I said earlier, is being dumbed down. And I strongly urge people to go online and read Plato's Republic as soon as possible. And there's a lot of guides and essays and outlines. But read Plato's Republic to help understand what direction our planet and civilization is going in. That's the number one book I tell people to read. What do you think?
Perfect. Yeah, I agree completely.
Very good. Well, we're about out of time. I keep this show kind of short because we are, it's cut up different ways. I keep it, people's attention spans now are actually much lower than they were even 10 years ago. So I keep my show a little shorter than other shows, but could you give out your webpage one more time, please?
www.theinteramerican.org.
Interamerican.org, interamerican.org. Okay, well, we're going to go for now, but Olavo de Carvalho, thank you for being on Sphinx Radio. Hang on to the line, and will you come back again when you get your seminar rolling in English?
Yes, I'll do it.
Very good.